So we're going to do the rest of the installation for the Edge model. The Edge model, once we've put in the carbon filter, the next thing is to put the actual GreenWave module in. So that's what we're going to do now. On the GreenWave module, I want to point out a couple things, and this is pointed out as well in the manual, but there is actually a flow direction here on this. Tell me if you can get that. It's crucial that this is going the right way. This particular outlet has a check valve in it, so if you put this in 180, the water will come to this and stop, and you won't have any water in the home. So if that happens to you when you first go to start it up, then check this. That might be what you've done wrong. But you make sure it goes with the direction of flow. Again, we're going left to right, so we're going to install it this way. Now, what I've done is I went ahead and put a male adapter on my outlet plumbing here. Because of these fittings having these rubber or washers in here, you don't have to Teflon tape these threads. That rubber washer is going to do the seal. So there's a reason why I haven't Teflon taped this particular fitting. So with the arrow facing that way, I'm going to go ahead and just put this on here, and I'm just going to tighten it up hand tight just so it's kind of where it needs to be. And then now what's left is to plumb from my outlet of the carbon filter over to the inlet of the GreenWave module. So I'm going to do that now. Once we've installed our plumbing from the outlet of the carbon filter, which would be marked upflow inlet, that is actually the outlet of the carbon filter, because remember, the downflow inlet is the inlet. So from the upflow inlet is the outlet. We're going to plumb over to the inlet of the GreenWave module like we did here, with the flow arrow facing the right way. Now once that's done, we're going to want to tighten these brass fittings. So we're going to use a couple channel locks and tighten them. Now when you tighten it down on here, you can just use your hand to hold the housing instead of trying to put this channel lock in there and screwing the threads up. But when you get out here, use both of these to tighten up the brass fittings. So that's what we're going to do now, is tighten these up and make sure they're snug. Now once we have everything installed, we're going to proceed to start the system up. When we start the system up, we're going to have to flush this carbon. To do that, we want to remove the actual GreenWave cartridge here, because we don't want to run those carbon fines through here. So we're going to remove this cartridge using the supplied wrench, and then we're going to reinstall the sump for the rinsing procedure. So to do that, we're going to put the wrench on here, and it catches on the little slots. We can loosen it up. And then remove the cartridge and put it in a plastic bag or someplace sanitary while we're doing this. Now make sure your O-ring is lubed up. If it isn't, go ahead and take some of that corn oil or food grade silicone grease and put on there. Now I've already pre-lubed this one, so we're not going to have to do it on this one, but we're going to spin this back up into place empty, and we're going to run it up hand tight. And then we're just going to snug it a little bit further with this wrench, just maybe a little 1/8 or 1/4 turn to snug it. Now, once we've done that, we want to make sure our carbon filter is in the bypass position before we put any water to it. And then we also want to install our sediment filter first. So let's go ahead and get the sediment filter installed now. We're going to use the supplied wrench and take the housing loose. Spin the housing all the way down. And then you can see, and you got an O-ring at the top, and then down at the bottom there's a little nub that comes up, and that's what helps to center the actual filter in the sump. So once you have the sump down, then get your filter, and you're going to want to tear all the plastic off the outside of the filter. Now once we've done that, we're going to put the filter down in the sump over that nub, and then we're going to spin it back on here by hand. Now the filter will center in the top of the head on its own. If it gets to where it's hard to screw, just wiggle it a little bit and that'll center it up. And then once it's centered, it'll spin all the way up that easy. You just spin it all the way up. And I usually go up hand tight and take my wrench and just snug it a little bit further. And then you're going to want to keep your wrench because you're going to need that when you change your filter once a year. We recommend that you change this filter once a year just to prevent any kind of organics or anything to build up on it. So once we put that in place, we make sure our carbon filter is in bypass. It's in bypass when the two handles are pointing to each other. Then we can go ahead and start to flush the carbon filter. Now, before we do that, we're going to turn the water on and we're going to flush all of our plumbing just to make sure everything is open, that there's not any little pieces of grit or solder or something in the line. So we're going to go ahead and open this up, and we open up a spigot downstream, and we slowly open this until all of our air is out of the system. Once all the air is out of the system and the system is running clear, then we can start to bleed in the actual carbon filter. So once we've done that, then we can start to slowly crack these two valves open. So you're probably just crack them both about an 1/8 turn, and you'll hear water start to come into the carbon tank. If you crack these open too fast, you'll hear a lot of knocking and you could actually damage that center distributor tube. So make sure you crack them both just a little bit and be patient. If you hear knocking, just back them back off and close them up a little bit. But you're going to slowly open these until you get the whole tank full of water and both of them are wide open. Now this is at the point where you would go to your open spigot and check the water color. Again, if you use a white styrofoam cup or a white plastic cup, you can really see the tinted water, whether or not it's clear or still has a tint. You're going to run this until it runs clear. If you pre-filled it, that won't be as long as it will be if you didn't pre-fill it. So basically, at this point, you run it until you see clear water. Once you see clear water, then you can go ahead and shut the incoming water off again and relieve the pressure. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to simulate that we've flushed the carbon and we're ready to move on. So now the carbon's been flushed, the water's shut off, the spigots or the faucets open downstream to relieve the pressure. Now we want to actually reinstall our GreenWave cartridge. So at this point we're going to use the supplied wrench again to take the housing loose, the sump. And we're going to spin that out by hand. Then you'll take your cartridge out of your plastic bag, slide it back down into the sump. Again, make sure this O-ring is lubed up. If it isn't, go ahead and put some more on there now, but put the cartridge back in the sump and then spin that up by hand. And then again, we're just going to do just a little bit of a snug with the wrench. And that's installed. Now our spigot or faucet's still open downstream, so we're going to slowly turn the inlet water back on to run water through the GreenWave module, just a little bit at a time. And we'll do that until it's fully open. And then again, go back to your faucet, check your water, make sure there's no air, make sure it's running clear. Once you've done that, your system's installed and ready for use. Now the things to keep in mind is this cartridge should last around 2 months on normal usage. If yours isn't lasting as long, that could be due to your hardness level or maybe your water usage. Maybe you're using a lot more water than normal. You'll have to kind of trend your frequency yourself. For a family of 4, we were getting right around 2 months of use out of this particular cartridge at 20 grains per gallon. So this cartridge you're going to have to kind of change as needed. Your first sediment filter, you're going to change that once a year. But other than that, not much to do to this until the 5th to 7th year. Then you'll replace your carbon because usually it'll be saturated by then. But other than that, that's the install for the GreenWave Edge. Thanks.